Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another day of Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Sarah. I'm one of the educators here at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California, and we are so excited for you to join us today for our Draw With Us class. Now, this is one of all of our favorite classes because we get to talk about science and marine animals, but we also get to draw, and then our favorite thing is to see your drawings at the end. Now, throughout the program, we would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, if you want to share your observations, and at the end of the program, if you want to share your drawings, we would love to see them. And we have this text line. So I have Cynthia in the studio with me, and she just put up this number. It's 562-286-1838. So throughout our program, anything you want to share, any observations, questions, things you're wondering, things you want to see more of, go ahead and text us, and we'd love to hear it. And Cynthia will take those texts and she'll send them in to me. And then keep this number handy. We'll keep it up for most of the program, but at the end of the program, if you want to show us your drawings, which we love to see, you can use this text line as well. Now, we ask you to use this text line if you are watching this program live. So it's 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning on March 2nd. But if you're watching after the fact, we still want to hear from you. We still want to see your drawings, but we ask that you email us at that email address right below that phone number, live@lbaop.org. All right, everyone, are you ready to get started? Now, before we start, what you might need to draw is any piece of paper or a whiteboard. I'm going to be using a whiteboard. It can be scratch paper, it can be colored paper, it can be lined paper, whatever you have available, and then whatever you have to draw. It could be a pencil, crayons, markers, a pen. Even if you have paints ready to go, any of those tools that you need to draw, have those ready. Now, I'm going to step off the screen for a moment and give you a hint at what we're going to be drawing today. Now, if you tuned in with us last week, we compared two habitats. We talked about that word a lot, habitat. And we are looking at a different habitat today. Now, that word habitat, it means a home for an animal. So right now we are looking at one type of place where animals might live, one type of home in the ocean. Now, this happens to be one of my most favorite places to look at. Ooh, there's that word habitat. Thank you, Cynthia. So that word habitat is a home for an animal. And this habitat here is one of my favorites. Now, if you have any idea what this habitat is, you're welcome to text us in. But this is a tide pool habitat. Now, I love tide pool habitats because I would say I used to go to the tide pool as a kid, but my parents would take us, but I even still go today. I think tide pools are one of the most easily accessible habitats in the ocean because they're usually found right along the coast where there's some beach, and then you walk onto rocks and the waves come crashing on these rocks and they leave little pools. So you don't have to even get in the water. You don't need any gear other than maybe a nice sturdy pair of shoes to go exploring and looking for these animals in this habitat. So there's usually lots of rocks, and the waves come crashing over those rocks, leaving pools. And then inside these pools, oh, here's a good picture. This is what a tide pool looks like. So you can see there's all these rocks and these waves out here, and the water comes rushing in. And then when the water goes out, it leaves a pool. All that water gets caught in those rocks. The rocks can hold the water, and then animals like to live in these pools. Now, these animals aren't very big. They're pretty small. But I like to think of them as tide pool treasures. There's so many things you can see in the tide pool. And what's neat is every time you go to the tide pool, you can see something different. Even if you go to the same tide pool over and over again, every day, you'll see different animals in different places, doing different things every time you go. So today we're going to draw some of those animals. Ooh, look at this. So these are some animals you find in the tide pool. So today we're going to draw some animals that we find in the tide pool. Now, I'm not going to draw the tide pool itself, although you are, of course, welcome to. But I'm going to focus on a couple of the animals, a couple of the treasures, if you will, that we will find in a tide pool, and we're going to focus on drawing some different shapes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my document camera where I have my whiteboard, and I'm going to draw the three shapes we're going to focus on. And then we'll talk about the different animals and we'll make them into those animals. But I'm going to draw those shapes first so that if you are practicing your shapes, if you're learning them, we can practice those while we are exploring today. So the first shape we're going to focus on is going to be a star. Just like that. The second shape we're going to focus on is a circle. And the third shape is a triangle. So these are the three shapes. Now you can draw these shapes as they are, or you can just take a look because we're going to redraw them when we are looking at the animals and drawing the animals as those shapes. But these are the three shapes that I want to introduce first. We have a star, a circle, and a triangle. So those are the three shapes that we are going to focus on today. Now I'm going to have Cynthia go back to one of those tide pool pictures and see if we can find these shapes. anywhere in these tide pools. Excellent. So we have a really big tide pool touch lab here at the aquarium where it's got 3 different pools and it's built to look like a tide pool that you would find out in the natural habitat. Now, one of the pools is deeper and that's the one we're looking at here. And we call it Coastal Corner. It's in our northern Pacific. So tide pools can be found all over, not just here in Southern California. We can find them all along our coast, all the way up Northern California into Oregon and Washington. And anywhere there's a coastal area, there's a possibility of tide pools. Now, if you take a look in this tide pool, do you see any of those shapes that we're going to focus on? Remember, if you have any observations you want to share, go ahead and text us in at 562-286-1838. Now, I see quite a few of that first animal or the first shape we're going to focus on. Do you spot it too? That's right, I see a star. Now, we have a lot of stars here in this tide pool right here. We've got a star here. We've got a star here and here and here and here and here. All over the place we have stars. So these are sea stars or starfish. Now, you might hear them called starfish or sea stars, and both names work. Now, us scientists, we like to use the name sea star because if you take a closer look at a sea star, here we go. These are called bat stars. They don't really look like fish. Now, when scientists discovered sea stars, they called them starfish. But then we learned a lot more about all the animals in the ocean. And we know that to be a fish, you need 3 things. You need gills, fins, and scales. Now, do these animals here look like they have gills, fins, and scales? Not really. So we know that they're not a true fish. But starfish, sea star, same thing, same animal. Whichever word you can think of when you're looking at these animals, I find that acceptable. So these sea stars, that is our first shape that we are going to focus on and the first animal we're going to draw. Now, Cynthia's going to cycle through a couple pictures like she just did, and you'll see that sea stars come in not different shapes because they're all star, but different sizes. Their arms can be really skinny like this one, which is called an ochre star. Or they could be kind of shorter and webbed like that bat star. Or this one is actually the underside of, I want to say a chocolate chip sea star, although I'm not 100% sure. Another kind of sea star. There are tons and tons of different types of sea stars. And you know what? We find sea stars in cold water, like here along our coast, and warmer waters. So they can be found all over. And they can be different colors. Like those bat stars came in pinks and purples and blues and yellows and orange. They could be, oh, here's a good one. This one's kind of orangey pink. This one's called a leather star. They can also be different textures, so the feel of them. Now, most sea stars you will encounter are going to feel kind of rough and bumpy, almost like a rock, except for this one. This one is called a leather star, and as its name implies, it kind of feels leathery. It's a little bit softer and squishier. And I can't confirm this, but I have heard a rumor that a leather star, if you take it out of the water and you sniff it, it smells like garlic. Although I can't confirm or deny, I have never tried to take a leather star out of the water. But that's what I've heard, is they smell like garlic. But what you can see here is just the different patterns that we find on their body. So let's go back to our drawing. And we're going to focus on the star. So I'm going to move my board up a little bit because right below this star shape, I'm going to draw maybe 1 or 2 sea stars. So the first one I'm going to start with, I'm going to pick, I'm going to go for red. And you can use any color you have available. Or you can just use, if you have a pen or a pencil, whatever you have available. And I'm going to draw one that looks more like that ochre star that had those really long arms. So I'm going to draw 1. Ooh, that's an interesting question, though. How many arms does our star have? Let's go back and take a look and count. Excellent. So here's that ochre star again. So let's see. Our ochre star has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 arms. So just like 5 points on a star, a sea star has 5 arms. All right, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. What do you think? It kind of looks like it's dancing. Sea stars can move their arms in a direction, and sometimes we see them looking really funny. Sometimes it looks like they're dancing. I looked at or took a picture the other day of 2 sea stars that were kind of like this, and then there was one in the middle, and they looked like cheerleaders, like they were holding up their sea star friend. Another time we walked by our exhibit, and the sea stars were stretched out like this, and it looked like they were lounging. So sea stars can move their arms in almost all directions. So you can make your sea star kind of doing anything with its arms that you like. Ooh, so was it Summer? Summer just sent in a question and asked, how long do sea stars live? Now, that's a great question. Now, most sea stars, they can live quite a long time. They can live like 20, 25 years or so, or even longer. And one of the reasons is sea stars, they don't really have any predators. If we go back to that picture of the ochre star, I know it's kind of hard to tell from looking at this animal, but I want you to think if it looks like it has any meat on its body. Now, it might be kind of weird to think about, but when an animal, a predator, is looking to eat something else, they want to eat something that's going to fill them up. It's going to be nutritious, right? That's why we eat things like fruits and vegetables. It gives us lots of nutrients in our body that help us stay healthy. So if we look at this sea star, does it look like, or do you think it has a lot of meat on its body? No, you're right. It does not. So it's not the main thing that many animals are going to eat. Now, the only animal that I've seen eating a sea star is a sea anemone, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And the reason we think the sea anemone was eating the sea star is literally the sea star just fell into the anemone's mouth. So it just happened to be there. But most animals are not looking to eat sea stars because there's not much to them. It doesn't really give them anything. And so they don't have any predators, and that can help extend the life of an animal. Great question. All right, let's go back to our drawing. And what you can do for your sea star is you can now decorate it. So I'm going to add some little dots like we saw on that ochre star. But as we looked at different sea stars, you can see that they have all different patterns. So you can do dots, you can do circles, you can do any shape you want, any pattern to decorate your sea star. Now for our ochre star, something kind of interesting, all those little white dots, those are actually tiny little pinchers. Now don't be alarmed, because we have those sea stars for you to touch when you come to the aquarium in our touch pool, and those pinchers are so tiny we would never feel it. But that helps them catch little pieces of food that might be floating in the water. It also helps them to clean their body, right? If things land on their body, they can use those pinchers to kind of move it off of their body so that they're not super dirty. Helps them stay clean. And some sea stars, if we look at them, their pinchers are a little bit bigger, but it just helps them to catch food or to keep themselves clean. There's even a sea star called a fish-eating sea star that has bigger pinchers, and it can catch a fish that might land on it thinking the sea star is a rock, and then they're able to eat it that way. Now, I'm going to have Cynthia go back to the picture of the sea star that was on the glass, the one that we weren't sure what type of sea star it was, because we can see a really interesting part of our sea star right here. These little circles right there. Those are the sea star's feet. So sea stars have really special feet. They're called tube feet. Not 2 feet, but tube. You can see them here. I think they kind of look like little macaroni noodles, but they look like a tube really. And then at the end of the tube is a suction cup. I know that's a big word, but what a suction cup is it's something sticky that can attach to a surface. And so the sea stars use those sticky feet, as we can see here at this bat star, to hold onto the rocks and also to move around. And they have one other special thing they can do with those feet. They can actually smell with those feet. You heard that right. Now, we don't smell with our feet. We might smell our feet, but we don't smell with our feet. We smell with our nose. But our sea star, they use those feet to hold on, to move, and to sniff out for their favorite food. Ooh, we can see this one's moving. Now, we do like to call most of the animals in the tide pool slowpokes, but this sea star looks like it's booking it. It's moving really fast. Cynthia said it's on a mission. I agree. I bet it's looking for food. Maybe it smells something in its habitat, and it's like, oh, I gotta go, gotta go find that food. So while it's still fairly slow, it's fast for a sea star. But if you think about all of those tube feet they have so many suction cup feet. If they're using them all together, oh my goodness, look how many this one has. So this is a sunflower star, and they can have up to 23 arms. And every arm a sea star has is going to be covered in those suction cups. So imagine a sunflower star with 23 arms and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands or more of these suction cup feet. It might be able to move fairly fast for an animal like this. Now, those suction cup feet, they are sticky and they help them hold on to rocks So when these animals live in the tide pools and the waves come crashing over them, it's not going to take them out into the open ocean and away from their habitat. Helps them stay nice and safe in their tide pool. All right, let's move on to our next animal. So let's go back to our tide pool. Any of our pictures or videos of our tide pool? Excellent. And we're going to focus on our second shape, which is a circle. Now take a moment. Let's make some observations. Do you notice any animal with a circle shape on its body? Or its body is a circle. Remember, you can always text us. We'll put that text line back up. Do you see any circles? I see a couple of circles. Now, there's two animals in mind that I have that have circles on their body, but we're going to focus on one of them. We're going to focus on this one that you can see right up here. And then there's another one, same animal right here, and then right next to it, and right below it, and right here, and right here. And then there's another one right here, and even this thing. These are all, oh, and this one right here. The more I looked, the more I spotted more of these animals. Do you know what this animal is? That's right. This is called a sea anemone. Now, sometimes this animal gets confused with an animal called a sea urchin, which is also a circle-bodied animal, but we're going to focus on the sea anemone. And if you look here, we can see its body is a circle, and then it's got a circle mouth in the middle. So that little hole in the middle is its mouth. And then it's got these little tentacles, these little wavy things, which we'll talk about. But this animal, the top part of its body, if we're looking down on it, which is often how we're looking at it, it is a circle. Summer sent in that sea anemones are circles. Excellent job, Summer. You are correct. So let's draw the basic body structure of our anemone, and then we'll talk about this animal a little bit. I'm going to use a greenish color, and I'm going to try not to erase my sea star. I realize I did this a little poorly planned for the lefty that I am. So I'm going to try not to erase my sea star as I'm drawing. But I'm going to start with a circle, like that. And then we're going to draw the stalk, sort of the long part of the sea anemone, which is actually where all of their organs are stored. Kind of like that. That's what holds the anemone up. And then, oh, we got to draw the mouth in the middle. Little mouth. And then I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to use an orange to draw those little wiggly tentacles. So I'm going to draw these wiggly tentacles all over. Now, some anemones have really long tentacles. Some are really short. Some are really thin. And some are a little bit thicker. It just depends on the type of anemone. So just like with the sea star, how they come in different colors, some with long arms, some with short arms, anemones are the same way. There's lots of different types of anemones. There we go. Kind of looks like a sun. Ooh, that green is bright. I like it. All right, let's take a look at a picture of an anemone. Ooh, a green anemone. Excellent. Oh, and look, we've got a star right here, too. This is called a brittle star. But taking a look at this green anemone. So, the middle, that's its mouth. Now, I said before that I saw an anemone, a sea star, being eaten by anemone. That means the sea star fell right into its mouth. But that's not usually what a sea star eats. Now, or what an anemone eats. Now, anemones are even slower moving than sea stars. They almost don't move at all. They can if they need to, but for the most part, they'll stick to a spot on the rock and they'll just sit there. So how do you think they catch their food? The sea star can smell its food and is going to crawl after it. But an anemone that's not moving very much, how do you think it's going to find or catch its food? Now, sometimes an animal like a sea star might just fall into its mouth and then it could eat it. But these tentacles actually come in handy. So the anemone has a really special thing about those tentacles. Those tentacles actually have stinging cells in them. Now that might sound alarming because again, we let you touch anemones here at the aquarium, and if you go to a tide pool, they are safe to touch. And that's because their stingers, while strong enough to catch a fish or a shrimp or another little tiny animal, are not strong enough to hurt us because they're so small and we have so many layers of skin. So they are safe to touch. But if you are a small animal like a shrimp or a tiny little fish that lives in the tide pools and you swim through, if you see this thing and you're like, oh, that kind of just looks like a plant or a flower, and you think, oh, it might be nice to kind of swim through it. But what happens is this anemone is then going to use those stinging tentacles to catch their food and then bring it into their mouth. So those stinging tentacles are really important. Now, if you ever have touched an anemone, or if you come to the aquarium, or you go to a tide pool and you do touch an anemone, you'll notice that to us it feels sticky, kind of like you're touching a piece of tape. And that's those stingers they're firing, and they're trying to decide, do you taste like fish? Do you taste like shrimp? No, not really. And so then they don't want to eat you. Now this one here is called a giant green anemone. Pretty good name. This one here in the back is another anemone, but this one looks really different, doesn't it? Now it's sort of a circular sphere shape, but it's missing its tentacles. Now don't worry, it didn't lose its tentacles. What this one did is it just curled up into a ball. You can take out your tentacles and you can wave them around. I can see my hands. You can take your tentacles and wave them around and catch some food. But then if you get scared or if the tide changes and maybe you don't have enough water, you can take your tentacles and bring them in and curl into a little ball. And that's what this white rose spotted anemone is doing. It's curled all in a ball, and you can see on the outside it's got these white spots. So you can really see how they can be all different colors. We even have an anemone called a painted anemone, and it looks like a painter took a paintbrush and dipped it in a bunch of different colors and just kind of took their brush and brushed all around the outside of the anemone. I think they're really pretty. Maybe some of you painted them. Ooh, Cynthia likes these anemones. What are these ones called? We think they are called tube-dwelling anemones. Regardless of what they are or aren't called, these are pretty cool-looking animals. Check out how they glow green in the middle. That's so cool. And you can also see just how long these tentacles are. So some are really long and skinny, some were shorter, all different shapes and sizes for the tentacles of our anemones. Pretty cool. All right, I'm going to go back to my picture, and I'm going to add a little bit of design. I'm going to take a blue to the stalk part. I'm going to add spots like that rose one. And you can add any colors. You can add some bright colors like your anemone is glowing, like those ones we were just looking at. And then I'm going to draw some lines here. And you can add more. You can even add an animal, that like a fish or something swimming through for our anemone to eat. However you want to decorate. Ooh, lots of dots on our pictures today. All right, so we have a couple minutes left. We've got one more shape to explore. The triangle. Now, we often talk, if you've ever watched any of our programs, we often talk about triangles in relation to sharks. We like to joke that sharks' favorite shape is a triangle because their fins are triangles, their tail's a triangle, their teeth are triangles, lots of triangles. But we can actually find triangles on some other animals living in other habitats like the tide pool. Now, sorry, Cynthia and I were conferring because I thought I saw the animal we're going to look at in this picture, but I had to make sure that what I was seeing was correct. So, there are triangles on the sea stars, right? If we took apart each arm of our sea star, we would get a triangle. But there's an animal who part of their body structure is actually a triangle shape. Now, take a moment and look around this tide pool and see if you recognize or you notice or you spot, it's kind of like an I Spy game, a triangle shape. Interesting. Now I'll give you a hint. It's near something orange. What do we see that's orange in this picture? See a couple sea stars. So an orange sea star is actually touching this animal. Did you spot it? Right here. So underneath this thing here, what this is, it kind of looks like a rock, but it's actually a snail shell. So let's take a look at a snail closer up. We have a couple snails that live in the tide pools, and their shells are kind of triangular shaped. So this picture, which I happen to take, this picture is of a wavy top snail. And it's wavy top because its shell is kind of wavy. Now, you might be wondering, where is the snail? So the snail's body is all inside the shell. The shell acts as protection for the snail. So because the snail's body is really soft and squishy. So underneath the shell is that soft, squishy body, and that shell can protect it. And although it's not a perfect triangle, it's pretty much a triangle shape. So that's how we're going to draw our snail today. Now I'm going to draw a purple shelled snail. Ah, Summer, you sent in sea snail. Excellent. You are on top of it. Ooh, so before we draw our snail, we got a question from Aya in Colorado. Thanks for joining us all the way in Colorado. We love that. And they asked, how do we tell the different types of anemones? Now, I have worked at this aquarium for about 4 years, and I worked at another aquarium for 7 years before that. So I spent a lot of time reading about and learning about and looking at pictures and talking with other staff about what types of anemones and different animals there are. So I'm able to spot them because I know what these are. But you can tell some of the different colors and the sizes. So look at all these different pictures. Now, for some of these animals, we just call them like we see it, like that giant green anemone. It's giant and it's green, so we call it a giant green anemone. Some of them have a little bit different names, like this one up here, and that was the one that we just saw the picture of. That's called a fish-eating anemone because that one mainly tries to catch fish. And I know that because I learned that that's what that one is, and they have a bigger body. They're bigger than most of the other anemones, as you can see. It's maybe only a little bit bigger than this one right here. And the color, so it's got sort of that red in the middle and yellow, the white tentacles, and the red stalk. So I've learned the different types, and you can tell them apart by the different colors on their body. And that's the same with the sea stars. The different colors and textures and shape help us to identify the different types that we're looking at. Like for sea stars, I can tell that this is a bat star because it's got shorter arms and like webbing between its arms. This one right here is called a giant spined or a knobby or a jeweled star because it's got these blue spots on it. All the ones with the white spots, those are ochre stars. So the more you read about and look at pictures and study them, the more we can easily identify them. But it's really the different colors, textures, and shapes on their body that help us identify. Excellent question. All right, back to our snail. So if we go over to my document camera, I'm going to start with a triangle, a big triangle. Let's see if I have another purple that works a little bit better. Oh, no other purple. All right, we'll just go with it. So there's my triangle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some lines inside the triangle, kind of like the waves on that wavy top. And then I'm going to kind of round them out a little bit. So there's the shell of this snail. Kind of looks like a little Christmas tree. But that's not the only part of the snail we need to draw. We need to draw the body as well. Remember that soft, squishy body? So I'm going to draw in blue a little body, a little head. And oftentimes what we see of this snail, we don't see much of their body, but we see a little head poking up, and they've got little feelers, 2 little feelers. And those help them to explore the world around them. Now, they do have eyes. Their eyes don't work as well as our eyes do, but those feelers can help them to explore, to test the water, to see if there's anything around them, to maybe, if they're looking, they can look for the shapes of their food they're going to try and eat. Now, most snails, they eat things like algae, so they actually have a raspy tongue. They don't have teeth, but their tongue is really rough. Sort of similar to think about if you have ever been licked by a cat. It kind of feels like sandpaper. And so they have this raspy tongue that they can use to scrape algae off. So we'll draw a little mouth for our sea snail to make sure that they're able to eat. And that is our wavy top snail. Now we can take a couple look at a couple other snail pictures. I know Cynthia's got ready a different kind of snail that also has a triangular shaped shell. Ooh, interesting. So this is called a Kelletts whelk, a whelk snail, but we're looking at that soft, squishy body. We're looking at the bottom. So this part right here, we actually call the foot, just like your feet, except they have 1 foot, not 2, like us, and their foot is super sticky. Now, I hope your feet aren't super sticky, but their foot is super sticky, and it helps them do suction on, just like the feet of the sea star, help them to hold on. The sticky foot helps them hold on as they move around. And then you can see, look, there's little feelers. And then if you look at this tiny little slit right here, that's their mouth. That's where their little raspy tongue is. It's called a radula, and it helps them to scrape off algae so they can eat. Now this one, the Kelletts whelk, I will say also can eat fish. They have something called a proboscis, which is this long piece that comes out of their mouth and allows them to reach farther and eat some fish. But most snails feed on algae. So let's take a look at this shell from the top part. we can. So we're going to take another view. Now what's cool is those pictures, I believe, were those Joel Sartore pictures? So some of our pictures, I know of our ochre star that we were looking at before, were taken by the photographer Joel Sartore, who does the photo arc. And so he took some pictures of our animals here and lent them to us. So the snail pictures are his as well. And so we're very grateful that he is bringing awareness to all these animals and taking pictures of our animals here and letting us use them for these programs. So thank you, Joel Sartore, for all of those wonderful photos of our animals. So here's another view of that Kelletts whelk. And you can see its soft, squishy body out here. And you can see it's got more polka dots, lots of polka dots in the ocean. And then you can see that its shell is kind of that triangle shape at the top. Excellent. So you're already starting to send in your drawings, which is excellent. That is, like I said, our favorite part about the Draw With Us programs. And I've realized we've now gone a minute over time. So I'm going to have Cynthia put us back into a tide pool. And I'm going to hold up, and you can all hold up and show your beautiful masterpiece drawings as we explored, stars, circles, and triangles today while exploring the tide pools. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. Once again, if you have any last questions, you can email us or text us, and we would love to see your drawings. So text those in to 562-286-1838. We would love to see them. And if you're looking for more programming, we have another program coming up at 10. Cynthia's going to be teaching it. It's in Spanish, and the theme is Ask a Scientist. Ooh, this is a good one. So it's going to be in Spanish, but if you have any questions, you can text us in any questions about any animal in the ocean, and you can text those questions in Spanish or in English, and you can practice your Spanish with Cynthia. All right, everyone, we hope to see you then. Bye.